They want to be able to see, and this is the world we live in now, but if you think about it, we all do this. We want to be able to walk into it digitally before we ever walk into it physically.
Yeah.
We want to know what this church is like.
Yep. Welcome to the Must Increase podcast, where our mission is to increase His name through your church. I'm Luke Clayton, your host, and I'm joined as always by the producer of our podcast, Bo Snyder. Bo, thanks for being here.
Good to be here.
And we are continuing a few episodes that we are featuring more on technology. Now, this isn't something that we do, in that it's not a service that we offer. If you were to, reach out to us and ask about, hey, can you help me with, my internet server, my web server, I should say, or can you help me set up my email, or in this case, what we're going to talk about today, can you help me with my live stream? That's something that we know a lot of people that do that, and so we would point you to one of them. That's kind of someone we endorse more or less to help you in those areas. But technology is something that's really essential to media marketing and that whole creative space, because we depend so greatly on the software and hardware that comes with it. And, I can geek out on this stuff sometimes, but I'm really dangerous with it because I think I know a lot about it, but in all honesty, I don't. And so we have had some great conversations and interviews that we've had in the past that we've been kind of holding on to and waiting to release at the right time, and that's the case with today's interview. Today we are talking with Mark Linentine, and yes, that Linentine name is going to sound familiar.
It's another Linentine.
Another Linentine, yes. We have featured Jeremy Linentine 2 or 3 times on this podcast, but he actually has a brother working at the same church named Mark, and Mark oversees a lot of things there, but one of the things he deals with specifically is media and technology and his live stream of their services. And so we talk with Mark about just how you can set up a live stream at your church on a pretty tight budget. The biggest thing that people think is that, it's expensive, and it can be. Cameras and all the gear required to set up something like live stream can add up really quick.
You can spend a lot. You can. You don't have to. And that's something I really like about Mark, he wears a lot of hats. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of people at churches, they do that. It's just kind of how it goes sometimes. But he has taken the approach. How can we not spend a lot of money but make it the best we can? Because live stream, it's something that's been around a while, but not everyone has it quite yet. Yep. It's something that is still being accepted, kind of adapted, I guess you could say. So this is something, he's got a really good setup, so this is what he talks about a little bit here.
Yeah, and one of the things we allude to in this interview is if you're not going to do it right, maybe just don't do it. Because some people will take the approach of, I'm just going to take my phone out and I'm going to do Facebook Live and I'm going to kind of prop it up on my pulpit. And I've seen that before. And I'll just say this. That's really not a good impression that you're making on people when you do that, because you're putting that out for everybody to see. Whereas somebody at your church who maybe is homesick, they'll understand. Somebody who's a guest who happens to stumble across that, they're going to think, what in the world is going on here? And it's just going to leave a bad impression about your church on the visitor. And so that's why we talk with Mark about, what can we do on a small budget to make a live stream system that's going to produce a quality product. And so we had a really good interview with Mark. And before we get to that, though, we wanted to remind you to subscribe to the podcast. You can subscribe on Apple Podcast, Google, Spotify, and really a bunch of other places. If you head over to mustincrease.com/podcast, you can see all the places that you can subscribe. But we wanted to remind you to subscribe because we drop a new episode every week. That way, whenever we release a new episode, it'll come right to your device that you're listening on, and you can listen there and stay up to date with what we're doing here on the podcast. But without further ado, we want to get right to this interview with Mark Linentine.
My name is Mark Linentine. I am from Gospel Light Baptist Church here in Rio Rancho, New Mexico. Grown up here all my life. What I do is a funny question. I'm not, depends on the day of the week. So I do some administration, Christian education, music, do some media, Yeah, and even other things. So I mean, it's just a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I do a bit of tech stuff for our ministry.
Yeah, so typical like mid-sized church stuff. Like,
yes, yes. Which the title is not even needed, right?
Yeah, exactly. Which it's interesting. I've seen large churches that you would consider large. That they operate the same way. So I think that's just
really
part of being in full-time ministry. Is
well, it makes you feel better.
So one of the things you do is with your music, media, audio, visual, and I've been privileged to go to your church on a few Sundays, and you guys are live streaming.
Yes, we are.
And I think we talked. using Livestream.com.
Yeah, Livestream.com as our platform.
Yep, and then you also live stream to Facebook.
We do.
So let's talk through some of your camera, because this is another thing. People think in order to live stream, I've got to spend a ton of money.
No.
And though you do have to budget for it, you can do it very affordably. And I think you found a way to do that, and I kind of want to talk about your setup.
Sure. So let me just run that in real quick. So first of all, yes, we are using the Livestream.com platform, but I will be the first to tell you, as you'll find out, that we have no affiliates here on this podcast. They are very expensive.
They are.
And I would never be able to afford them now. The only reason we can afford them is because we were an early adopter of them. So we're on this grandfather plan that if I touched it, like it would become something like 6-7 times more than what it is right now. So we just don't touch it.
Yeah.
And so it handles our dual casting and all of that. But you mentioned that like you guys are using Boxcast. The amount that you have out there, the options that you have out there are, and I think I believe you can even live stream straight to YouTube now.
Yep.
It's not entirely made for the applications, church application, but I've seen it done.
Yep.
So there's a lot of things out there. Honestly, here's what I would say. Is when you start to talk about multiple different angles, now you are talking about more expense, because you're talking about video capture cards, switching, whether you're gonna do a hardware switcher or a software switcher. We software switch. I'll talk about that in a second. But really, in the end, you just need like one good camera. When I say good, I don't mean expensive. We're using Canon G20s and G40s, which you can get for $1,000 or less. You can get them for refurb for even a little bit less than that. Phenomenal camera. Don't go out there for the big 4K, all that kind of, because chances are you don't have the bandwidth to broadcast at that level anyways, nor does your end user even want to digest the content at that level.
Of course not.
It's going to destroy his data plan. Or he probably doesn't have the bandwidth to, so most live stream platforms are downgrading and upgrading your signal based on the end user.
Yep.
And so really, I think we're still broadcasting at 720 as our highest level, but we're broadcasting at 3 levels. Livestream does it, so it's broadcasting at 720, 360, and I think something else. So our mobile users are most of the time not even watching it at 720, which is your lowest end of HD. They're not even watching that because their data plan isn't really allowing it because they're not. So, but I mean, honestly, it looks good on just about any device we view it on. So just having a good, clean single camera that's bringing that in. And then you can expand from there. So we do have multiple angles. Right now only 2, but we have the opportunity to go even further. And what we're doing, I think you mentioned that you guys are using Blackmagic's hardware switcher. And they have a couple of those.
Yeah. It's the Atom, ATEM.
ATEM or Atom, I don't even know. Whatever.
I'm not technical enough to know.
Yeah, someone far geeky than us could tell us if you're supposed to use the acronym or say it, right? But there's a hardware switcher, which we did a hardware switcher for a while. But now what we're doing is we're using a Blackmagic capture card, which again, Blackmagic is the best out there as far as video capture.
Yep. And they're surprisingly pretty affordable.
They really are.
Yeah, for what they're giving you, it's pretty affordable.
I believe our capture card, which is what they call their DeckLink Duo 2, I think, it has 4 inputs and 1 output for SDI connections. So we can go up to 4. Right now we're only using 2, but we can go up to 4 simultaneously. I believe that card costs like $400 or $500.
Yeah.
And you need to put it into a computer that is beefy enough to run it. So there's that to consider too. The computer needs to have a really fast graphics processor and a really fast processing chip in it. But that's how we're bringing it in, and we're using Livestream Studio's software to live switch on screen.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing I would say too, is for a while when we first started live streaming, we kind of had this idea. I had this idea that we could do more than one angle, and then we could post edit. But my goodness, after doing that just a couple times, you realize you can't keep up with that. Three services a week.
Not at all.
There's no
even one service a week would be difficult.
It's not practical. Yeah. It's not practical. Even with the best, post editing mixing software, it's not practical. Because if you think if that service was, typical service is hour 15, maybe hour and a half, you're going to spend at least twice that post edit mixing, and that's if you're doing it fast.
Yeah.
So you do the math on that real quick. If you want to switch angles, you must live switch, or you'll never be able to keep up with this. It's just not possible.
That is true.
And then you're so a lot of these places, they're archiving so like Livestream.com archives for us, but most of our views are happening on Facebook Live because it's broadcasting into Facebook Live as a simulcast.
Yes.
It's not sending two feeds, it's sending the same feed to two places, which is actually, there's a difference there. It's putting the strain on Livestream servers, not on our bandwidth. And that's the difference, and that's important. If you're trying to shoot the video on your end to two places at once, now you're doubling your bandwidth usage.
Yeah, and you've got to have a pretty serious, bandwidth plan to be able, or internet plan to be able to do that.
Yeah, bandwidth. I don't know. Most churches I know don't.
Yeah, because I know whenever our church live streams, I mean, of course, it's the service, so no one else is really using the internet.
Yeah.
But if you try to use the internet, I mean, we're just broadcasting to one, like I said, one platform, and then they're taking care of distributing
They're taking care of it. Yeah.
But even broadcasting to that one platform, I mean, like, if you try to get on the internet, like, it's crawling a little bit because I mean it's taking a ton of bandwidth.
Right, and we prioritize the computer that's doing that. That's what you have to do, and then we're also trying to limit other users. But it's heavy. It's heavy. I believe that we Livestream.com recommended that we be able to sustain, I think 6 or 7 as a minimum, 6 or 7 gigabytes per second upload.
Oh wow.
To be able to maintain what we're doing, and we sustain about 8 to 10, so we're just into that range. But there's other services that do less than that.
Yeah.
I don't know what.
Like I said, I've heard of. This is not my area of expertise per se.
Yeah. Mine either. So
I've dabbled in it enough.
Delving out into an area where
there's going to be some experts out there listening, like, these guys don't know what they're talking about. Okay,
so send us a comment. Tell us we're wrong.
Yeah. Tell us we don't know what we're talking about. That's cool. But yeah, there's a lot of services. Now I'm going to make a comment here, and I want to see what your thoughts are on this. I have seen a lot of churches, and you know what? If you're listening in one of these churches, sorry, I'm calling you out. And they're literally taking their phone, and they're just kind of like propping it on the pulpit, or whatever. I'll just give you my thoughts on that. I think if you're going to live stream, do it right or don't do it. Yeah. I see people doing that, and there's a time and a place for that, handheld live stream, whatever, shooting it in portrait mode, and hey, we're out here, okay, that's cool, kind of just doing an update or something. But I think for making, because a lot of times people maybe they don't think this way, but live stream would be a first impression piece for people who've never visited your church.
Absolutely is.
And for you to just be shooting it, kind of like with the whole double chin thing going on, you're kind of looking down like at it, like
because that's the thing. There's always going to be those first 3 seconds where they turn it on, and they always have it front facing. They never remember to flip it around.
Yep. But my thoughts on that is like, I don't know, if you're going to do it right, or just don't do
Absolutely.
it. And I don't know if you have.
No,
any
I agree with that
on
100%. Because here's my take on that. I expect when I see someone's personal live video, I expect to see it in the wrong portrait landscape mode. I expect to see the weird double chin. I expect to see all that. But when I'm going to look at your church's live stream, I don't expect to see that because your church isn't a person, it's a group. Yeah. And even Facebook calls it a professional page, right? But then we're also saying the other one, which is what we were just talking about. When we say do it right, we're also not saying go out and spend thousands of dollars. We're not saying that either. No. We're just saying that, I think a phone, if you can, and actually we found a way to do this. If you can use your phone as a video camera and it's sending its feed into a computer, that's different. You've got it on a tripod. Because these iPhones now, I mean, I've
even shot some short films where we take a little footage on an iPhone. So
absolutely.
But
it's not between that and then this, Mrs. Shaky Hands over here, who's or it's propped up on my pulpit. So every time I hit my pulpit or something,
exactly. So it's not that your phone's not good enough quality. It's that it's the way you're doing it.
Absolutely.
Like you said, it's not
your arm's not a tripod.
Yeah, exactly. And this isn't just your personal Instagram, Snapchat, whatever. Absolutely. Like this is an impression of your church. So,
and we know from website analytics, because we look at this, when people jump on our website, we know that obviously they're going to land on the home page, and we know that the top 3 places they're going to go on our website, and this is true at almost every church, is the service times, the staff. They want to know who leads the church. Okay. And then number 3, they're going to go to our media page specifically to view video of the church. They want to be able to see, and this is the world we live in now, but if you think about it, we all do this. If we go to a website, if it's a physical location that we're about to go to, we want to be able to walk into it digitally before we ever walk into it physically. Yeah. We want to know what this church is like.
Yep. I mean, you're going to, it doesn't matter if it's a church, if it's a business, or you're let's say you're looking for a new doctor. You're going to look them up. A new chiropractor, just to be specific. You're probably going to look them up online. Before you go there. Same thing with churches. And if you can go to a place where it's like, well, hey, I can actually watch their service before actually going. I actually knew a pastor who was anti live stream because of that. He thought, well, I don't want to give people a cop out to not come to church so they can sit home and just watch
Sure.
it live. They were able to, okay, look, it was my pastor, okay? He's great. I'm just going to say, okay, it was my pastor. I'm not going to name him, but for those of you who know, he was my pastor. But I will say this.
That's a good point, though.
We convinced him to let us implement it in our church, and it's been about 6 years now, and his tone on that's completely changed.
Yeah.
Because we have found, and he has personally had church members come up to him and say, hey, I found you guys on Livestream. I found you guys online, and I watched it there first, and I decided that's what I want to be a part of this church. We have had people move from out of state to our to be, just because they're like,
Sure.
we want to be a part of this church because they found it on Livestream. And so it's a powerful tool.
Because I get asked the same thing by my dad. It's a good. I think every preacher
His dad is the pastor, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Are they just going to stay home and watch it?
Yeah.
And it's a good question, because he asked, can we shut it down live and only show it on replay? And we even looked into that. Live stream actually is live by definition, so actually it's not possible under most circumstances. But what we found is that 80-90% of our views are replays, not live watches anyways. So that's important. And that's another reason that you should be trying to get your content to Facebook Live, because that's where you're getting your views on replay heavily. But then we also found things like, the people who were actually watching were like nursery workers.
Yeah.
Who they were here, but they missed the service. They want to go back and watch it. Our musicians who wanted to go back, like our choir, who wants to go back and listen to themselves. Not a prideful thing, but they're proud of the effort they put into it.
Yeah.
And then another thing we're finding a lot of too is family members in other states are jumping on and watching. And because maybe their family member sang, or because they just really like the preaching at our church or something like that. And then of course people in the community who were thinking about visiting or whatever, they're finding us online first almost every time. So
and I mean, I just think it's amazing.
Very few people who we know are staying home instead of coming.
Like they're staying home because of
one
live
or
stream,
two, if any. Is what I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, if anything, they're like, I'm home, I'm sick. So
but let's keep in mind, Luke, these are going to be people who are unfaithful to church anyways.
Exactly. Yeah. It's kind of people where it's like, they're just looking for.
They're going to struggle with faithfulness.
Their kids got a runny nose, so we're all staying home.
Right.
Kind of,
but that's a good point, too. Hey, mom's home with sick kids.
Yep.
And hey, now that I have small children, when my wife has to stay home, she watches it on live stream.
Yep.
So,
And I also know it's a pretty good ministry for, elderly people that are shut in. Like my grandpa, he's 80, 85 years old. He can't always make it to church.
Absolutely.
And
we had a lady who had a hip replacement. She was out of church for 3 months, and she watched every single service online.
Yeah, and that's the thing is these people like this, their whole life they've been faithful to church, and so if they've got a way to where they can actually watch it live, that makes a world of difference to them.
Absolutely.
And so the live. So to recap this portion of the conversation. If you're going to do live stream, do it right.
Sure.
But you can actually do it right and do it somewhat affordable.
Right. Right doesn't mean super expensive.
A couple components you'll need. You obviously need a good camera. Like I said, not some 4K cinema camera. Yeah. A good camera. You'll need some kind of live stream service, whether it's livestream.com or Boxcast. Like I said, we don't have affiliates here. This isn't my space, so I don't really know specifics, but you can find it. And you probably are going to need some kind of pretty significant computer to, that's got, you can't just go buy the $200 Chromebook. That's really not going to work.
No.
You would need to, get probably something, high level PC or Mac it's got some RAM, that's got some processing power to be able to handle that. But if you're willing to budget for it and do something, and that's another thing too. I think you'll agree with me here. Yes, you always need to be updating your equipment.
Right.
But at the same time, you can make this purchase and really you're good for the next 3-4 years.
Several years.
Yeah. It could be more than that. And so, especially if you buy...
But by the time you're ready to upgrade, then the leadership in your church has probably seen that this has an impact. And so they're more willing to get behind it even financially. But again, like we said, we're talking like every few years. Honestly, this is going to be by far one of the cheaper investments that your church makes on its annual budget.
Yeah, seriously.
For sure.
Really good stuff there from Mark. And some people, they can be overwhelmed by, the live stream process and things. But if you just break it down, say, hey, what do I need? How does this work? A lot of it can be self-taught. Just kind of figure out what you need to do. It doesn't cost that much, and it can really bring something to your service.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something that people, and I think we said this in the interview, and we've mentioned this before, it's a great way to make an impression on people who's not going to visit your church. When someone visits your website, and you have the option where you can watch live or watch an archive service, they're going to do that very likely before they ever step into the door.
Absolutely,
Yes, it takes a little bit of upfront investment of time and money and resources, but it's very much worth the investment to do it the right way and make a good impression on potential guests to your church. And so once again, we are kind of featuring technology here over the next few episodes. And I did want to mention this. From time to time, we like to mention who's coming up in the next episode. We've talked to Drew Shetler now. I think we've had one official interview with Drew, and I think we've highlighted him in like a kind of a best of episode. And we work with Drew a lot on short film projects specifically. But this next episode is really exciting. What we do, we sit down with myself, Bo, and Drew, and we kind of have a roundtable discussion about the tech of video. So we talk about cameras and equipment, lighting, all this stuff. If you're interested at all in videography and you want to do more with that at your church, this is the episode to listen to.
I was just going to say, calling all short film people and videographers, and this is a really fun episode. We had a really good time. Once again, just kind of sitting around together, just kind of bouncing ideas off each other. Really, really a lot of fun.
Yeah, so be sure to tune into the next episode here. And once again, we want to remind you to subscribe to our podcast wherever you're listening to podcasts. And we would love it if you gave us a review and a rating, whether that be in iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google. That really helps us and boosts our rankings there in the podcast catalog there. So that really helps us out. And of course, we really appreciate it, and it means so much to us when you share the podcast and when you let others know about it. So whether that be through social media or you reach out to someone directly who you think would benefit from it, we want to thank you for considering that and for sharing the podcast. We make this podcast for church leaders to help them with their media and marketing. Well, that'll do it for today's episode. Bo, thanks for being with us.
Absolutely. Always good to be here.
And thank you for listening right here on the Must Increase podcast, where our mission is to increase his name through your church.